Hello, this is Press and Prejudice, light chats and deep dives into news ideologies. This is episode 2 of our first season, and today we will be talking about the other aspect of this podcast. Last week, we tackled the essential definition and characteristics of news, as well as its existence and criticisms throughout history. This episode is part one of a two-part episode about the tools and theories related to analyzing news discourse. Hold on to your butts, it's gonna be a little bit tricky. We start off with the basics: linguistic text analysis. I think it's best that we establish first what we meant by text analysis because it's a very broad term in the world of natural language processing, text or textual analysis, or in some cases, text mining, is the analysis of contents in digital forms of communication, including emails, blogs, tweets, forums, and other related digital media. However, we want to look at text analysis from the perspective of linguistics or applied linguistics. In the perspective of linguistics, text analysis is the study of, well, text, a coherent and meaningful string or stretch of language, spoken or written, that functions as a whole. Text analysis focuses on describing any text structure and communicative functions through a systematic and objective process. This may include research methodologies such as componential analysis, pragmatic analysis, cognitive metaphorical analysis, and corpus linguistic analysis, to name a few. Simply put, text analysis attempts to break down bodies of text and attempts to understand and make sense of it through various systematic and objective means. You might notice that I have been emphasizing the word objective too much. And this is because there is a common notion about text analysis that most of it is subject for interpretation, even subjective to some. And this is very much understandable, probably because much of what most people know about text analysis is limited to literary interpretation. And even that is supposed to be objective. To be more direct, let me just say as early as now that text analysis, no matter what shape or form it may be, is and will always be objective. It's a research based academic endeavor based on decades worth of theoretical frameworks and methodologies. It is mostly, especially objective in terms of the methods of analysis. I mean, one cannot simply just read and reread text and then suddenly come up with a generalization about its meaning, right? Various applied linguistic disciplines depend on empirical evidence to come up with sound generalizations, and those empirical evidence just happen to be specifically language and linguistic productions. Text analysis also has, let's just say, two layers or levels of analysis. The study of language can happen on either the micro level or at the macro level. Microlinguistics is the study of the minute details and the internal structures of language. This includes the study of sounds and sound systems, also known as phonology, or the study of words and how they are formed, also known as morphology, or the study of how those words can be linked together to form sentences, syntax, the study of sentential meanings or semantics, and the study of language use, pragmatics. All these microlinguistic level analyses of text treat language as an abstract system of signs and symbols. This means that language, and by extension, text, is seen as nothing but a cognitive construct with no physical manifestation or external influence. On the other hand, we also have macrolinguistics, which concerns more on the study of language at a broader, more external level. It mainly focuses on the relationship of the text with the world, including society, culture, cognition, human development, education, politics, religion, and many other external forces. Some disciplines in macrolinguistics include social linguistics, discourse analysis, computational linguistics, and psycholinguistics, just to name a few. Now, why is this certain knowledge about text analysis and linguistics important to our show? That's because understanding the dimensions and layers of analysis included in investigating text helps us understand the objectivity in the process of analyzing those texts. Understanding that there are different lenses or points of views in viewing text helps us understand that we are not simply leaving the interpretation of meaning to our own whimsical and rather unreliable personal interpretations. Now, although I may sound like I'm trying so hard to sell text or linguistic analysis to you, it obviously has its own strengths and weaknesses. So, what are those strengths and weaknesses? Let's start with the weaknesses. For one, the most commonly pointed out weakness of text analysis would be the one that I have already mentioned earlier, the tendency of people to immediately dismiss text or text analysis or linguistic analysis as nothing but a subjective interpretation of meaning. Again, this might be because of how common text analysis is in literary interpretation and criticism. And just like what I said, that's understandable. After all, meanings can be very flexible, especially in the contemporary views of meaning making. Nowadays, even the most basic biological construct has become an individually constructed meaning. I know you know what I'm trying to say. And that is not to say that our ideologies of today are something to be frowned upon or to be criticized. That's just how society has decided to evolve into. What I'm just trying to demonstrate here is the validity of the criticisms on text analysis. That because meanings, attributions, and ideologies are flexible, text interpretations can also be flexible and subjective. But that's the thing: interpretation is not the same as linguistic text analysis. The former is based on individual understanding, while the latter is based on theoretical assumptions and frameworks. Simply put, interpretations are indeed subjective and fluid, but text analysis is not. But, we can't change the fact that studying language may receive a lot of criticism simply because some people have already built a misconception that it is, well, subjective. The other weakness of text analysis that I want to share is related to the first one that we have discussed. Language use and language itself are constantly evolving. This means that meanings that can be extracted from the analysis on them can also constantly change. In fact, here, consider this. In the late 90s to the early 2000s, comedy films and TV shows would not even be afraid to talk about and therefore make fun of topics that may be deemed sexist or homophobic or even misogynistic in today's standards. Right off the top of my head, I can think of Ace Ventura or Friends or Big Bang Theory. The way those media productions used language may seem to have been quite offensive had they were used in contemporary times. This is where studying language use and text analysis becomes a little too conflicting. Let's just say that if you decided to analyze texts that have a different social, political, or cultural background, let's say texts from the past, like our previous example, would you analyze those texts based on your current understanding of the world and risk being unfair to those texts? Or would you use the philosophical, conceptual, or theoretical frameworks that fit the contemporary context of those texts and risk being criticized by your readers? I'm sure there is a technically correct answer to those questions, but to an analyst, the stress and confusion that one might have to go through is something that needs to be considered. On the flip side, of course, text analysis has its own strengths. As I have mentioned earlier, the analysis of text is based on empirical data. I mean, think about it. Language is everywhere. Language and its usage are very much observable. It is a component of human existence that seems to always be present in every aspect of life. So, you could say that data for analysis is beyond abundant. Conversations can be recorded. Well, of course, with the proper ethical procedures. Written documents can be collected and analyzed. Various forms of media can now be easily saved. To go to the extreme, you can just sit down at a restaurant for 20 minutes and you can extract so much data just from observing how people interact, how the menu was written, how posters were laid out, how the servers deliver their spiels, and how everything is just textually constructed. Another strength of text analysis is the many ways that we can look into the text. There exists so many theories, philosophies, and frameworks that we can use if we want to understand meanings from different points of views.